Welcome back to another episode of the Brilliant Resilient Experience.
Hey, nowadays the pain follow me. Deal with trauma privately. I don't want to be a burden. I handle things defiantly.
So right now, as I'm delivering information to you, like we're sitting here doing this, like we can't feel it, but like structural damage is actually taking place. Like toxins and byproducts are being deposited, toxic waste is being deposited in our brain. And so when we sleep, and this was proven with imaging while somebody was sleeping, our brain cells actually shrink and pulses of cerebral spinal fluid come in and pretty much like power wash our brain.
Today we have a very special guest. He is a sleep performance coach. So he works with a lot of athletes, he works with fighters, and his main goal of what he's working on is to improve their sleep to help with their athletic performance. So I'm really excited to dive into this conversation. He has over 13 years of experience in the sleep medicine field, and he has a certification from Harvard. So I'm very interested to see his insight on sleep, how it affects the body, performance, and as an athlete, how important it is to get good sleep. So I know this is going to be a great conversation. So let's go ahead and bring on Thomas Hinton II. Hello.
Can you hear me okay?
I can.
Very good. How are you?
I'm good. How are you? How's your Sunday going?
It's going really well. I'm excited and also nervous for this. I get nervous every time I do these, so.
No worries. Yeah, I used to get really nervous when I would first do these when I first started. And then the more I did, the less nervous I got when I would do them. But yeah, I used to just I was like, oh my gosh, I hope I don't say something stupid.
No, I don't understood. But no, I'm excited to talk about this stuff because it's, I think these combat, they need to hear this,
Yeah,
big time. How's your Sunday going, by the way?
good. I love Sundays because, funny enough, that is the day that I usually get the best sleep.
See, there you go.
Yeah. I think it's because I don't have as much to do on Sundays. Well, I mean, I guess I do my podcast on Sundays, but it's like it just feels like an easy day. Like it's
Yeah,
more relaxed. There's not as like the hustle and bustle of the weekday. So it's like I can just sleep in if I want to and just chill. But
yeah,
yeah,
good. Oh, that's good.
yeah, it's nice. I feel like lately I've been trying to get better sleep, but it's hard. It's so hard. And that's why I'm so excited to talk to you because I feel like I need help just as much as your clients do.
Yeah. We'll dive into it. I enjoy it. Like I can, and please interrupt me if you need to, because I can get a little long-winded sometimes because I love what I do. I love sleep.
Oh
Um,
yeah.
so yeah,
That's
cut me off
awesome.
because I can get rolling and yeah.
No worries. I'm gonna adjust my mic a little bit. My audio is a little high compared to yours.
Oh, am I too loud?
No, I was too loud.
Oh, okay. I can.
No,
You're not
you're
loud
good.
to me.
No, you're good. So I guess, when did you kind of get started in this? How did that happen? Obviously, you didn't just wake up one day and you're like, I'm asleep, performance coach. Like, how did you get involved in that?
Yeah. So I'll start at Genesis here. So um, I started off in the sleep lab. I've been in sleep medicine now for 15 years, and I started off in the sleep lab doing sleep studies. And so that was really how I explained. That's where I really got the opportunity to learn and witness the architecture and the mechanism behind sleep. So what it looks like. So I always joke and say, "Oh, I've seen sleep," because I have, because we're putting electrodes on the head and we're able to see that brain activity. And so I know when you're sleeping, I know when you're awake, um, and different, what stage of sleep you're in, and all that kind of cool stuff. So um, just fast forward, continued education and training. So the first half of my career was on the neurological side of sleep. The second half of my career was on the pulmonary side, so it's more respiratory focused. Um, and so, I ran the sleep medicine part of a pulmonologist practice. And one day, a gentleman says, "Hey, man, you deliver information really well. You should do this for a living." And I'm like, "Well, I do this for a living." And he's like, "Well, I'm like entrepreneur, like business level," which scared the hell out of me because I never thought of doing anything like that. And so I just started doing some research, talking to people who are business owners, blah, blah, blah. And then in July of 2019, that's when I launched, circadian health systems, but I do business as circadian health and performance. Um, but yeah, so that's kind of how what led into it.
That's awesome. So
Yeah.
I guess when you like first started working, before you started working in the lab, I guess
Hmm.
what kind of drove you? Did you just have a passion for it, or like what kind of drove you to get into that field in the first place?
Oh, okay, yeah. So I get so that's what I call my why, and I get this question a lot, like, "What's your why?"
Yeah.
And actually, it started with my dad. He passed away when I was 2.5, a massive heart attack, and my mom kind of talked about how he would, when I saw pictures of him, he was a fit guy, 19 inch biceps, he was huge.
Yeah.
And so it was just like a head on top of some shoulders. There was like no real neck, you know. And so working in the sleep lab, we dealt a lot with sleep apnea. And so I have sleep apnea and it can be hereditary. And
Oh,
so,
really?
yeah, it can. And
I
so,
didn't
my
realize
mom
that.
kind of, yeah, yeah. And so my mom kind of talked about every now and then, like the whole snoring thing. And so I just kind of put two and two together myself and was just like, man, like, what if because he's only 35 years old. I'm like, what if he had sleep apnea and just didn't know it? Because it's
Wow.
one of the causes of heart attack and stroke. And so I was like, dang. And so I just kind of really got into that. The position came open. I applied for it. I got it. And pretty much like all I've been doing now is like my main like goal was to help people, as many people as I can, not be my dad. You know what I mean? And like end up like that. You know what I mean? And end up checking out early. And so that's what's always driven me, was just like, helping people. My wife and my daughter, they always tease me because every time we go somewhere and somebody brings up sleep, like my antennas kind of perk up, and they're just like, "Oh, don't get him started," because I'll start going. Yeah,
I
that's
understand.
how
That's how I am with MMA. Anytime I hear somebody talk about MMA, I'm like, oh, and
yeah,
like I love talking about it. But that's good. It's important. I think there's not enough people in the world that are doing something that they're actually passionate about. I think that too many people kind of chase the money or chase whatever. And when you do what you actually love and you do something you're passionate about and you're driven by helping people, um, there's just so much more to that. I think it speaks for itself for sure.
yeah.
And you can tell too when somebody's passionate about something and you can tell when they aren't. And the
Yep.
results will
That's
show
what
that
shows.
too.
Yes. Yeah, it definitely. I've worked with a lot of people, and I've worked in healthcare for a long time, and I've worked with, I've seen people who are just in it for the paycheck,
Yeah.
and it does show. It does show.
Definitely. Well, and it's easier to get burnt out too. You when you do what you love, it's a lot harder to get burnt out because you're doing it for the right reasons.
Absolutely. Yep. And I
100%.
feel like that's what I'm in it for the right reasons.
Yeah, and you have so you were working in the sleep lab obviously. You told me about
Mhm.
that. And then you have a certification from Harvard?
Yeah, so it's certified in sleep improvement. It was a little course that I took. Just adds a little cachet, to it a
Sure,
little bit.
yeah. That's
Um,
awesome.
but yeah, so like, I add that in there, because I have it, and so
Mhm.
it sounds good when you're able to say that, like, oh yeah, like, I'm certified in sleep improvement from Harvard Health, stuff like that. So it's really fun.
That's awesome. Yeah, I know they do like some of those one-off courses. I've never really looked into it too much, but I've always thought that was really interesting that they have like those options to do that cuz yeah, I'm sure
Yeah,
that definitely helps you having that under your belt and um of course anytime people see the name Harvard they're like, "Ooh."
I know. Yeah,
So, yeah, for sure. That's really cool. So, I guess tell me a little bit about like how you work with your clients. Like, I guess what is your goal when you get a new client? What's your goal with them most of the time?
yeah, absolutely. So the way I explain it is, I exist to help athletes understand how and why sleep directly impacts their athletic, mental, physical performance, recovery, personal stuff, like all mental health, like all of it. And so what I do is I customize and I tailor, programs specific to them, because everybody's different. Like, it's not a one size fits all type of thing. So I gather all this information, about them. And so I listen to what they are doing, but I'm also listening to what they're not doing. And so then I
Mm,
take that information and I put it together. And then, we do what I call a plan overview. So like, we agree on it together, because I don't want to waste my time or theirs and do a bunch of back and forth. So we agree on it together, and then, I send it to them, and then we start. And so what I do is I hold their hand throughout the entire process. And so what that does is that brings a lot of accountability, compliance, comfort, confidence. like knowing that you have someone that's actually gonna like, hey, did you do what you're supposed to do? They know that they have to meet with me, once or twice a week. So it's like, you better do what you have to do. You know what I mean?
Right.
Um, so, but yeah, and that's how I do it. But I also focus on just like the recovery part as well. So like I have my own brick and mortar space here, and so a lot of times they'll come and see me, and they'll get like cupping done, red light therapy, molecular hydrogen therapy, biofeedback stuff. And I got some other things coming up now that I'm gonna start adding to it. But yeah, they come to me and get some of that stuff done. And it's just like how you sleep directly impacts how effective your recovery stuff is. And
Yes.
some don't aren't recovering properly. So then I dive into that with them as well and just say, okay, this is how it works. So it's the way I explained it. It's all part of the process of becoming great, right? Because like all these athletes, they say they want to win and they want to do this and they want to do that, but then it's like, okay, well, are you willing to make the proper sacrifices? So just what I bring to the table, just the sleep part of it. Now you have to prioritize your time, in your activities to make sure that you can get proper sleep. So now what are you
Yep.
willing to give up? So I help them understand that, and that's part of the mental performance part that I work on them, that I work with them, that I work on them with as well. So it's just all around. I try to surround them with as much as I can, um, within my wheelhouse. Like I don't try to go outside of my, you know what I mean. But the sleep is the
Sure.
base and the foundation, and all these and some of these other things that I do impact that. So
Right. Well, because I'm sure there's people that are like, well, I get 4 hours of sleep a night and I'm killing it, And it's like, how do you convince them that? Because there's even been times in my life where I've been like, oh, I don't need to sleep. I'm good. And then the effects will catch up to me later. And then I'll be like, okay, maybe I do need to sleep more. But because it's like, oh, I'm able to get so much more done when I only sleep 4 or 5 hours a night. And then it's like I have all this more time in the day. So how do you convince people who are like sold on the fact that they can just get everything done and they're killing it and only getting, a few hours of sleep a night? How do you convince them the importance of sleep and why that's not good?
just honestly, I mean, just presenting them to them, like, the data.
Yeah.
um but not only that, but just my experience, right? So when they hear, like where I come from in the sleep field, and I'm just like, look, I know that you think this. I said, but I've been doing this for a really, really long time, and it's like I've seen these things, so I have these experiences that I'm able to share with them. And they're just kind of like, okay, like I can't, I can't not take this guy serious because this is what he does for a living. He's not just some random guy telling me this stuff. And yeah, on the front end, it does seem like you're able to get more done when you stay up longer and do this. But then, like you said, on the back end, then you start running yourself down, then you're not doing anything. When
Yep.
if you have a consistent sleep schedule, then you're able to knock out stuff every day the way you want to, so it kind of has an opposite effect. Um, and so it's funny. I'll give you an example. Um, so I worked with a coach for the Chicago Sky, the WNBA team, and I got him to where, I mean, he was staying up till like 3, 4 o'clock in the morning, 'cause he's like, no one's going to outwork me. I'm like, yeah, but you're not going to be known for that. You know what I mean? Like, you're going to be known for how you're falling apart, later on in life or even earlier in life. That's what you're going to be remembered by. Right. And so
Right.
I got him to where, he was going to bed by 11:30 midnight. And then I did a follow-up session with him. He's like, oh my gosh. He goes, my wife told me to tell you thank you. He's like, because now he has more energy. He's more mentally focused, more mentally energized. He's like, I'm doing things around the house. He goes, I'm folding laundry. Like, I'm doing all these things that I've never done before because he's always been so tired and just, sleeping in later, and now he's actually getting things done, and so that's kind of how I get through to them a little bit when it comes to that kind of stuff. Like, just entertain me. Let's just try it. And then if it works, great. If it doesn't, okay, then you got me.
Right.
But yeah.
Yeah, because I feel like it's so easy to convince yourself too. Like I've convinced myself like, oh, I'm more creative at night. I'm more creative late at night. So I need to stay up late. But then it just totally like spirals out of control with my sleep schedule. And then there's like one day I need to wake up super early and I can't, or if I do, I barely get any sleep because my sleep schedule is such a mess.
Yeah.
And I think like, and I have ADHD too. So I think for me, like it's really hard for me to like schedule my sleep.
Hmm.
And it seems like just other things take precedence to it a lot of times. And
Yeah.
I forget, and I also have a chronic illness. I have lupus. So sleep is
Yeah, I
really
saw
important
that.
for me.
Yeah. Oh yeah,
Sleep is very
absolutely.
important. But it's
Yeah.
hard. I
I
mean,
want to
especially when you're busy, for sure.
yeah, I
Go
want to
ahead.
piggyback on something that you said. So,
Yeah.
because this is a real thing as well. When you said you feel more creative, at night, well, that's a real thing. So people have this thing called a chronotype. Okay,
Hmm.
and your chronotype kind of depicts when you're going to go when you sleep and when you wake up. And so there are some people, and they're categorized by animals. And so, like
Hmm.
for me, my chronotype is a bear. So I'm in bed by like about 9:30 or so, 9:45, and then I wake up about 7 o'clock. All right. So I'm a bear. You would be considered what's called a night owl. Okay. And so there are some people that they are more productive, between 9 p.m. and 12 a.m. You got some people like I'm most productive between about 9 a.m. until about like 1:30, 2 o'clock. And then I hit that wall, and then I don't want to say I'm useless, but it's just kind of like now I'm just kind of coasting, through the rest of the day. So like if you give
Sure.
me something to do between 9 a.m., and 10, 2 p.m., like boom, boom. I mean, I'm going, I'm hitting it, hitting it, hitting it. But after that, it's just I kind of hit this wall where I'm just coasting. And so I always tell when I'm working with like non-athletes, like in professionals and different things like that, I tell them like schedule the most important tasks of the day when you're the most effective,
Right.
when you're the most productive, because then you'll get those. Not that other things aren't important, but like the things that you really 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 got to get done, like get that stuff done within that window when you're most productive, and then whatever else, the kind of auxiliary things in the back end you can kind of do when you're just kind of coasting throughout the rest of the day. And so then when they start doing that, they're like, holy cow, like I'm getting more done. Oh, I got a promotion. Oh my gosh, like I'm making more money now at work. Oh my God, because now you're more engaged. You're more, you know, um, just different things like that. I mean, there's so many different components to it. I mean, I can just go on forever, but that's kind of the hot points on it when it comes to that stuff.
Yeah, that's really interesting. I feel like I need to pay more attention to that too. Like, when am I the most productive? Because, like, sometimes I feel like I'm a slow starter. Like, I'll
Hmm.
get up and it'll take me forever to kind of like get into the day. And then it's not till like nighttime that all my ideas like come to life. And
That's a
then,
real
but
thing.
then also sometimes first thing in the morning, I'm super productive. So it's like, I don't know. I think I just need more consistency, really.
Well,
Um,
consistent. So what you want to do is like you want to do. I guess that's something that we're going to discuss later. I think it's a question for later that you're going to ask me. So I'll leave it for that.
Yeah. So, in your
I'm going to
experience,
write this
what I
down.
wanted to ask you is, you've worked with non athletes, you've worked with athletes, you've worked with fighters.
Hmm.
What do you think? Is there a big difference when you're working with, let's say, an athlete, like a team sports athlete, like basketball, football, whatever, versus working with a fighter? So obviously, I talk to a lot of fighters, so
Yep.
I'm really curious on that and how different is like their, I guess, protocol.
Yeah, so it's a little different because of the toll that their sport takes on their body, opposed to like basketball, um, like football. I would kind of put them in the same category, just because of how barbaric it is.
Yeah.
Not to that other sports you don't take a beating, but when eye test and you look at football and then you look at like soccer, it's like it's not the same, you
Oh
know.
yeah, for
Um,
sure.
but for fighting, they get hit, they get punched in the face for a living, and all of it, and all other areas of the body, kicked and all that stuff for a living. Um, so their protocols are a little bit different in the sense that, like when I focus on the brain health aspect of it. So that's kind of where it's different for me, because I mean it's just if you look at, and there's too much research and data out there, and studies that show the toll that combat sports takes on the brain. Um,
Yeah.
and a lot of them don't understand the role that sleep plays in how their brain like, regenerates and rejuvenates and like cleans itself out and different in cell repair and different things like that. And so that's kind of for me, that's kind of the difference because like with my basketball players, I don't really focus so much on that with the basketball, with like a basketball player or something like that. I mean, we do some cognitive stuff, but it's more so like it's solely like okay on the sleep side of it. And so I guess that's the best way that I can explain it. But again, it all comes down to, when I'm doing the consultation, just listening to like how they're doing certain things. And then that's how, I'm able to customize kind of the protocols and different things like that. So it's different
Okay,
for everybody.
interesting. Yeah, that was one thing I was kind of thinking about because of obviously a lot of brain trauma happens in combat sports. And yeah, I mean, it's really important to take care of your brain and body, especially when you're getting concussions, you're getting injured, you're getting all that kinds of stuff. Because not only for, yeah, I mean, if you're getting punched in the face, but like you said, also like the injuries too. I mean, there's a lot of injuries in combat sports, probably more than most other sports, I would think. Just because, yeah, I mean, you're literally getting hit, you're getting kicked, you're getting thrown around. I mean, even just the wrestling too, like it's hard on your joints. And in my experience, sleep helps with recovering your muscles. I mean, like they always say, like you don't grow muscles when you're working out. You grow muscles when you're when you're resting,
Yeah.
and you're breaking them down when you're working out. So the rest is so important in order to like rejuvenate and help that recovery process. So I was really curious about that. What have been some discoveries that you've made in working with athletes and working with fighters that have been just really, I guess, interesting or really like revolutionary to you?
Um, for me, I guess the main one is because like the majority of my clients are Olympians, and other pro athletes, in that MMA space and other spaces. And
Sure.
like the biggest thing for me is that that a lot of them don't know that this is a real thing.
Yeah.
And it's hard trying to get them, because once they reach the pro level, a lot of them have this, oh, I made it. And it's like, yeah, you made it, but now you got to focus on being great at this level now. Like it doesn't stop, you know.
Yeah.
And then you present these things to them, and they're just kind of like, oh, like I don't, I that's not a priority right now, you know. But then like I get on the podcast and I start talking about these different things about like the brain and how, like, okay, I'll give you an example. Like 20% of the oxygen, 20% of the oxygen that we breathe. I'm start over. Our brain uses 20% of the oxygen that we breathe, and that's a lot of demand from something that only takes up 2% of our body, right?
Right.
And so, but this isn't a priority for you. You know what I mean? So that's kind of like a big revelation for me when dealing with like any athlete, but more so combat fighters. When I'm reaching out to either their agent, or if they're accessible, I'm reaching out to them. Oh no, it's not a priority. I'm doing something else. I'm just like, I bet you're not doing this though. You know what I mean? And it's just, and then they hear stuff like this, me talking on here. Next thing you know, my DMs are getting flooded. Like, oh my gosh, I had no idea. Blah, 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 blah. And so, I guess for me, that's my biggest revelation working with like high level athletes is just there, and not, and I'm not saying this to be to say like idiots or anything like that, but like just their lack of their lack of knowledge when it comes to this kind of stuff. It's just kind of like,
Yeah.
man, like you're on this high level, like in like no one's told you this, and
Right.
until I just now said it, and then just like, no, I had no idea, so
Yeah, I feel like it is starting to become more of a conversation. I think, especially since podcasts have become a thing because people have more access to information now. And like Andrew Huberman, for example, talks about sleep all the time. And it's like, I think it's good. I think it's good that we hear that, but it's still, you hear it, it's true, but you still will find every reason to deny it or to avoid it. And it's like, we know the things that are bad for us for the most part. We know the things that are good for us. But it's like, it's almost, I thought this was interesting. So, like, you see all these things about discipline all the time. It's like I feel like, pretty big movement right now on social media, and especially
hot
with like
word.
yeah, like the Goggins behind me, like all that kind of stuff. And you hear about discipline, but I think sometimes that word gets a little misconstrued
Yeah,
because while discipline, yes, sometimes is pushing yourself to the limit, staying up late to finish that project to make sure you get things done, of course. But I also think a big part of discipline is saying no to things and prioritizing the things that are important for you long term as well, which sleep is one of them. But what I've noticed about that is it takes even more discipline to have better sleep, because then you have to be really good at time management. Because when you get less sleep, that means you have less hours in the day, like we were saying earlier, less hours in the day to do things. So you have to meticulously plan out your schedule to make sure you get enough sleep, because those things have to get done no matter what. And if you don't get them done, guess what? You're staying up till midnight, 2 a.m., 3 a.m., you know? And so it takes discipline to make that time to get your good sleep. So it's almost like doing less, but you're doing it in, well, not doing less, but doing more in a shorter period of time in order to have the discipline to get good sleep. So it's like, discipline isn't always running yourself into the ground. Like, that's not what discipline is.
Well, I want to piggyback on that really quick. So there's this clip, and I use this too, and I give him credit for it. But Nick Saban, the head coach at Alabama, he said there's a certain time frame, where athletes struggle the most, and when it comes to discipline, and he's like, it's two. He said it comes down to two things. He like the one thing is like there's something that you know that you're supposed to do, and you don't want to do it, but can you make yourself do it? And then on the other hand, there's things that you know you're not supposed to do, but you want to do it. Can you make yourself not do it? And that's kind of that's discipline. Right there. I know that I'm supposed to prioritize my sleep and create triggers leading up to bed. That my body, my brain will recognize leading up to it. But I really want to get on Instagram, and I want to get on Twitter, and I want to get on TikTok and all this kind of stuff, right? And it's like, I really want to do that, but can you make yourself not do it to put yourself in the best position to be successful during your sparring session the next day? You know what I mean? Or to be able to recall a certain, like move or kick or whatever it is that you're learning, to be able to recall that and execute that properly the next day. Are you willing to do that? That's a sacrifice that you have to make. You know what I mean? So that's the thing where I know what I'm supposed to do, but I really don't want to do it. Can I make myself do it? Or man, like I'm cutting weight. I really want to eat this, that I'm not supposed to eat, so can you make yourself not do it? Because that's the other side of it. I know I'm not supposed to do this, but I want to. Can I make myself not do it? I really want to go to this party, but I have a fight in 3 days. You know what I mean? Can I make myself not do it? So like, it's just as an example, like that's what that is.
Oh, for sure. Well, and it's even harder now we have so many distractions, right? We have a phone, which isn't just a phone anymore. It's a computer, it's a TV, it's everything. So, and I don't know, what do you think about this? So to get the best sleep, do you think it's best to like throw your phone in a different room, I guess? Or how do you feel about having your phone like with you, like in the bed, like you're getting ready for bed, you're sitting on your phone? Like, how bad is that? Or is it just depend on the person?
It is bad. And so it's funny because
okay, that's what I thought you were gonna say.
A lot of my athletes, they hate when I do this with them, but then they're like, oh my gosh, like this has made a huge difference, and it's hard too because it's like, well, what there's an emergency, whatever it is. But yeah, I tell them like, hey, you know what, like so we do like a 30-minute, what's called a 30-minute wind down period. And so let's say, for example, my bedtime is about 9:30. So at 9 o'clock, like I start my 30-minute wind down, and so like, there's no like electronics, no cell phone use, no social media, like no electron, none of that stuff. I find something to do, that's relaxing for 30 minutes, more so about 25 minutes or so. And then like the last 5 to 10 minutes of that is finished off in the sleep environment. So like I'll change into what I'm going to wear to bed in the sleep environment. Some people don't wear anything to bed, like, okay, well, I know when, Brianna takes this off, she goes here. But when Brianna puts this on, she goes here. And so your brain understands that, and it's a cue. So what you're doing is like you're setting all these different cues that your brain will recognize leading up to bed. So then therefore when you finally get into sleep environment, that transition and the relaxation and sleep is a lot more pleasant. You know what I mean? And so that's really, really important to be able to do that. That takes discipline. That really, really takes this. I mean, I've talked to athletes that are like, oh my gosh, but I I'm in bed. I love going through social media when I'm in my bed. I'm like, yeah, but this is why your body can't transition well, because now you've associated this environment with wakefulness and happiness and laughter. So when you enter that
Mm,
environment, your brain's like, oh, this is where we have fun. And then you start preparing for it.
right.
And so now you can't relax. Or people that do, like, finances or homework or stressful things in the sleep environment, well, now your cortisol's up. You know what I mean? Now your adrenaline's
Mm,
going. And so the next time you enter that environment, it's like, ooh, last time Brianna was in here, she was stressed out. Let me go ahead and start preparing her for that. And so then now you're wired up and you're awake and you're like, why can't I sleep? Well, because for the last week you were doing something stressful here. And so now your brain associates that environment with stress. And so that's a huge, I mean, like that's really important that you recognize that. So again, that takes a lot of discipline. And so when I'm talking to athletes about this, sometimes I was like, look, like if you want to be like on TikTok or Instagram so bad, when you don't win the championship or when you don't win, make sure you're on TikTok and Instagram watching the person who won. Make sure you're watching their stories since it's that important to you. Make sure you're on there
right.
then, right? And then they're kind of like, I'm like, yeah, like this is you have to be intentional about your sport, and this is part of it. So
Yeah. No, it's so true. I feel like that's something I struggle with is relaxing before I go to bed and getting myself into sleep mode, unless I'm just exhausted, which a lot of times I am. And it's not hard for me to fall asleep because I'm tired, I'm exhausted. But
yeah,
there are a lot of times where my brain, it just seems to like go, 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 go. And I don't know how to turn it off. And yeah, that probably has a lot to do with it. And I feel like a lot of people, I mean, most people sleep with their phone in their bed,
yeah,
and and for a lot of people their phone is their alarm clock, and
yeah.
so their phone's right there, and if my phone's right there, it's hard for me to not get on it.
Yeah, so I'm very disciplined. So like I like when I go into the bedroom, I plug my phone up on the charger and it goes face down on the floor. I'm done. Like I don't.
Yeah,
That's it. You know what I mean? And I'm able to do that. And so I know that people are there. I know they're capable of doing it, but are they willing though? Because being capable and being willing are two different things. You know what I mean? Like I have
yes,
athletes that are capable of putting down their phones and staying off, but some of them don't do it. But then I have some that are actually willing to do it, and they do it, and then things change for them, athletically, mentally, physically, all that stuff, right? And so
100%.
it's trying to get athletes, especially on the elite level, because again, like the mindsets are just different. But it's just
Yeah,
getting them to understand. It's like, hey, like you brought me on here for a reason. You know what I mean? And this is what we're going to be doing. And
for
so I
sure.
don't really baby them too much because they get their hands held everywhere else, so I don't do that.
That's awesome. Yeah, I feel like especially in combat sports now, like you get to an elite level, the sport has evolved so much that it's almost like those little things. And I just saw a clip, Colby Covington was talking about this. It was a clip I just saw like literally a couple hours ago. And he was talking about why he doesn't drink alcohol. Or he was saying, like, I have a drink once in a while. And he's like, because I am a full-time athlete. He's like, I have dedicated myself to this sport. And he was saying, like, going out partying, that doesn't fit into my goal basically of what I want to do. And I wanted to ask you about that a little bit. And I'm kind of,
Yeah.
you know, piggybacking here on things, but since it's fresh on my mind, how does that whole, like, I guess, work hard, play hard lifestyle, how does that affect sleep and performance? Because I know a lot of people that um during the week, they get their stuff done, they very disciplined, and then as soon as the weekend comes, all that goes out the window. They stay up till 3 a.m., 4 a.m., they're out, they're drinking heavily, and I've been there. I haven't had a drink in over a year because, and I same exact thing like Colby was talking about, because I don't want any distractions. I don't want anything negatively affecting my performance, my productivity, my schedule. It's, to me, it just seems like those things just get in the way. But I wanted to hear your thoughts on that because it's something I think about a lot.
Yeah, no, it's really hard because like you have it's really hard to convince. I mean, like even non-athletes, because you have outliers. like out there in the world,
Yes.
you know what I mean? And like anytime if you ever notice, like if somebody posts something on social media about like, about discipline or about this, whatever, there's always like someone that's, a couple of people are like, oh, well, I've only had 2 hours of sleep in 2 years and I'm still able to do this at a high level, just I'm being dramatic, but you know what I mean. Like there's always like someone that's always got like, oh well, I didn't have to do this. Well, I don't have to. And so there are outliers out there, but they
Of
don't understand.
course.
They're using their own situation and thinking that
It's
oh well,
anecdotal.
because yeah, like because this is how I've always operated, and like anybody should be able to do it. It doesn't work that way. Um,
No.
so there are some athletes that can, I mean, look at I don't know if you know who James Harden is, the NBA
Yeah.
player. It's documented that he loves going to strip clubs. You know what I mean? And he'll after a game he'll go, but then like
Yeah.
he'll show up again and put 40 up on you. He's an outlier. You know what I mean?
Yeah.
Like
John
he's
Jones is
good.
another one that comes to mind.
John Jones, he's an outlier, but for the majority that's not the case. So
Yeah.
again, trying to get, and here's the thing though, like when I'm working with athletes, I tell them like, look, I'm not saying that, I mean, we have to have an outlet somewhere, every now and then. I'm not saying that you have to like completely just shut down all fun, none of that. There has to be a balance, right? But at the same time, it's hard to have balance when you're trying to be elite and trying to be great. So it's
Yeah.
a balancing act, so like you lean too far on one end of trying to be great, and then like family, friends, and then like oh, and then you come back again, and it's just a constant balancing act on that tightrope. And it's just I explained to them like it's like, well, what do you want out of this? Like, okay, like yeah, go party, go have fun, but not every weekend, not through not
Right.
not 2 or 3 days a week. You know what I mean? You can't do that. That's not good for the body because you're literally undoing everything that you've done leading up to that, right? Because how you sleep before and after competition directly impacts, I'm saying your recovery, everything. You know
Oh
what I
my
mean?
God,
And
I
so if
know.
you're so if you do really good, Monday through Friday, and then Saturday, and then or I guess Monday through Thursday, and then like Friday, Saturday, and you're just hitting it hard in the clubs and doing things like you're undoing
Yeah.
everything, and so that's what they don't realize when I come to them. I'm like, hey man, like let's talk about where. I mean, I don't get mad if they say no. Rejection doesn't bother me, but it's just kind of like again, I get the whole it's not it's not a priority, and just like you guys don't get it. But keep doing what you're doing though. Like keep going. Because then when it doesn't work out, what happens is they start. Oh well, he, will she, will they, them, and then they start pointing fingers. Oh man,
Yeah.
I just didn't prepare. I need to prepare more. I need to prepare better. And what they're missing is they do all this overtraining and all this work, 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 grind, 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 but they don't add sleep as part of the grind. That's part of the training,
Yes.
and they don't implement that. It's what I call the missing piece of the performance puzzle,
Mm-hmm.
and they don't add that in there. And so like the same thing keeps happening to them over and over and over again. And they're just like, I don't understand why. Well, I do, you know,
Yeah.
um, and I've kind of got a little proof in that because there's a few athletes that I've worked with. And again, I'll never claim to be the sole reason why an athlete elevated or evolved.
Of course.
Again,
Yeah.
it's missing the performance puzzle. So there's a few athletes that I've worked with that are just like, man, like they've been in their career for a couple years. They keep getting to a certain point and they just can't get over that hump. Some just like personally, and then they bring me on board, and then boom, next thing you know, they just start going, and they're already doing other things. They're just missing this piece, and so then they add
Right.
that piece, and then things started changing for them. So I love that part. Like I love that I can come in and do that and just like, oh man, you're taking off now. Oh yeah, because I was missing this one piece and we put it in there. So
For sure. Yeah. Sometimes it's just making one little lifestyle change can make a
yeah,
huge difference. For sure.
yeah,
We see
yeah.
it all the time.
Can I
We
say
see it a
something really
lot.
quick?
Yeah, go for it.
So speaking of lifestyle change, so like a lot of people don't realize that sometimes just tweaking, just having a set bedtime and a set wake up time makes a huge difference because your body needs to know when it needs to start the process of waking you up, like while you're still asleep. And cortisol, which is our stress hormone, plays a huge role in that. And so
Yes.
your body has to know. So like so I have some athletes who are like, oh well, I get up at 7 a.m. one day, and then it may be 9:30, and then like and then 6, oh, and then 8, and then and so it's just like boom, 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 and so your body's kind of like, I don't want to start the process of waking you up. When do I start increasing cortisol? When do I start decreasing cortisol? When do I start doing this? And so that imbalance can really mess you up as well. So sometimes, I mean, I'll just tweak that alone, and they're like, oh man, I feel so much better. Yeah, because now your body knows what it needs to do when it needs to do it. That takes discipline. So all of a lot of what I do is very like discipline oriented, because sleep isn't just something that it's not just some fad. You know what I mean? Like this is, I mean, we have to sleep. You
Yes.
know, and it's just it's part of that cost. It's part of that price of wanting to be elite. But some just don't want to do it, and so they'll never get there because they don't take that serious.
It's hard. That's been my biggest struggle with sleep, is like trying to get into a consistent schedule of waking up and going to bed. It's been, I don't know why, it's just so hard for me. How long does it usually take? Like if I were to say, okay, now I'm going to start waking up at 5 a.m. and I'm going to go to bed at 9 p.m. or whatever my sleep schedule is, how long does it typically take to get into a routine where you don't have to like force yourself to do
Right.
it? Or is it even
So
possible?
yeah, so I usually like when I'm working with people, like the first 30 days are the most important.
Okay.
Because your body needs time to acclimate to that change. Now, that's how I do it. You can get 10 other people, that do what I do, um, and you're gonna get 10 different answers. You know what I
Sure.
mean? It's just based on experience. In my experience, that's what works for what I do and who I'm working with. So like for 30 days, like we're gonna work on this, okay? Because your body needs like so if I let's say I'm working with you and you've been consistently going to bed, around midnight or and after that, and you're like, man, I really want to start going to bed around like 10:30. I'm not gonna be like, okay, here's our plan tonight, 10:30 bedtime. It doesn't work that way, because
Okay.
it's gonna shock your body, and then you're just gonna be laying there awake, and your body's like, well, what are we doing in here? Like we don't usually do this until, you know what I mean? And so like I do it in steps. And so really what I do is like every like 25 to 30 days. So let's say you go to bed at midnight. So I would give you an 11:30 bedtime. So at 11 o'clock, start the 30-minute wind down and bed by 11:30. And we do that every single day, because some people like within like a week or 2 weeks, they don't see results. They're like, oh, this isn't working. Like, no, you got to be consistent. And so next thing you know, like that third or fourth week, it's like, oh, this is starting to get a little bit easier. You know what I mean? And then we scale it back again. Now we're gonna go to 11 o'clock bedtime. 10:30, start 30-minute wind down at 10:30 and bed by 11. So it's a process. And
Yeah.
some people can probably, can get you there even sooner than that. This is just how I do it. And that's just what I've seen work for me and my clients. So
No, that makes total sense. And I feel like too, it's hard a lot of times because people's schedules are so inconsistent too. So it's
yep.
like, yeah, how can you go to bed at the same time every night when one day you have something to do at 10 p.m., the next day you have something to do at 6 a.m.? It's like, yeah, you're not going to be able to get good sleep that way. Or even I've noticed, like, I've been waking up earlier, like I feel like the past month or so, pretty consistently. Some days I wake up at 5, some days I sleep until 8. Usually the latest I sleep into is like 8.
Mhm.
But most days I'm usually up around 6 or 7. And so I've noticed that now, like I went to the fights last night.
Mhm.
The fights were over at 10:30. I was exhausted. I mean, my body was like, we need to go home now.
Yeah.
And so as soon as the fights were done, I got out of there. Like me and my friend were like falling asleep. But I think it's because my body knows that like normally we're not even out at this time. Like, what are
Real
we
thing.
doing?
A real thing. Yeah.
Yeah. And I've noticed that because I used to be able to just go and go and go and go. Like I would go out, go to the fights, hang out after, whatever. And now it's just like I'm just like, I want to go home. I want to go to bed. I need to get my sleep. And which is a good thing, but it's so hard to balance because it's like, yeah, there are things that I have to do sometimes at night, and then trying to get enough sleep and waking up early the next day. And then I also have the chronic fatigue on top of it, which that completely screws up my sleep all the time, because there have been so many times where I've gotten into a good sleep schedule, and then one day I'll sleep in because I'm just having one of those days where just my fatigue just takes over me.
Yeah.
And then I end up staying up late that night because I slept in. So it's
Yeah. A kind of
it's
vicious cycle
so
for you.
hard. Yes, it's a
Yeah.
vicious cycle. It's hard to
So,
break.
okay. So to add to that, so what you just said, so you went to the fights and then you're like, oh man, I'm really gotta. So you didn't even like abuse your body the same way that the fighters did, right? And your body was already feeling like that. And so that's why so I thought like, you use and abuse your body more than the average person or non-athlete. So therefore your body and your brain literally requires more recovery and repair time, right? And so again, so you felt that way and you weren't even fighting. But then this guy that just finished, whether he won or whether he lost, they both still, still use up their body the same. You know what I mean? And then the guy that lost is probably even worse shape. And
Yeah.
so then they'll do that. They'll, even if they lose, like they'll get, cleaned up and then they'll go out
Mm-hmm.
after all of that. I'm just like, holy, like you guys, like you just, they just don't get it. But it's not a priority. I always go back to that. Um, but
Yeah.
yeah, it's just wild to me. And that's another, that kind of go back to your other question. That's another big revelation of mine. Is like, man, it's just like, he would just let me help you out. You know what I mean? Like I could get you somewhere different, you know. But it is what it is. Like they think that I always say like the enemy of good is better. So like they think that they're good, but then like there's better out there, but it's hard to accept better because I'm good over here, you
Yeah.
know.
I
Yeah.
think sometimes too, a lot of people don't see their potential.
Hmm.
And that's why I think it's so important where if you're in a field or you're in a career, to find people who are doing it on a much higher level so you
Yeah.
can see an example of what it actually takes. Because then
Yep.
you'll be like, oh, wow, okay, can I actually get to that level? And then if you see that and you think, oh, I could do that, then it's like,
Hmm.
well, you know what it takes. So you can do it. You have an
Yep.
example in front of you, and then you realize that it's not as easy as you think.
Hmm.
um but I think that's so important because also it shows you that it is possible, because sometimes we see these elite level athletes, or even just like in my experience, like I see Joe Rogan, like to kind of compare to my field, like, and I'm like, wow, like that, there's no way I could ever do that. I'm like, that's impossible. But
Yeah.
then when you kind of start interacting with people who are doing it on a high level, and you realize, you're like, oh, I just need guidance, I just need someone to show me how to get there. And you
Hmm.
realize that it is possible. You're just missing some pieces, you're just missing a few things, that if you make these little tweaks. And like that was the biggest driving force to get me to like stop drinking, because I saw a lot of people that were really successful, and I met a lot of people that were really successful and talked to them, and a lot of them don't go out, they don't go anywhere, they are
Yeah.
at home in bed.
Yep.
And so
Yep.
I realized that, and I'm like, oh, okay. And it's not even just like the alcohol part of it, which obviously, and we can get into that if you want, the effects of alcohol on sleep,
Yeah.
because I know it has a big effect. But it's not only that, but it's also just the time, the time consuming factor of it,
Hmm.
and not being disciplined enough to say, no, you know what, I need to be in bed at that time, I need to stay home, or even just like having the discipline to leave a couple hours early when you normally would stay and hang out and go to the next bar, go bar hopping, whatever.
Yep.
But it's not even like that. It's the time aspect of it, and it's staying out late, being up late, because usually when you go out, you're staying up late, you're eating bad, you're you're not
Yeah.
in an environment that's meant to drive health. You're eating fast food, or you're eating bar food, you're out with your friends, you're not paying attention to the time, and then you kind of just go backwards. And so when I realized that, I was like, oh, this is almost like a cheat code, because most people are doing these things. Most people are going out on the weekends. Most people, and if they're not going out, they're doing something that's a distraction. They're doing
Yeah.
something that's holding them back from reaching their full potential. So I'm like, well, if I just eliminate those things, then I'm already going to be ahead of most people,
Not easy.
because It seems like that is like the quickest way to get ahead, because like the hours I've gained in just the past year from not doing, and it's like I have fun, guys. I have fun. I still have fun. I go to the fights, like once a month or whatever.
Yeah,
And I have friends, obviously. I don't socialize as much as most people probably do, but I socialize in different ways. I socialize, like, I like to talk about ideas. I like to talk about, my goals, plans, like those kind of things. I don't like to sit around and talk about whatever. It's like I want to talk to people who are going to help me elevate. And so I feel like that to me was like the biggest cheat code that I found, was like, oh, I just need to, yeah, be more disciplined. And then I will get ahead, because the times that people are out and they're, let's use, I don't know, January, New Year's Eve. That's when everybody's supposed to be starting on their goals, right? Well, most people start the new year hungover. And like the hours of time that I've gained from not doing that, from not only going out, but then the next day you wake up and you don't feel very good. The hours I've gained from that, it's just like, I wish I could just add them all up and see like how many hours of productivity I've gained. And not that you need to like not have fun, and
yeah,
that you need to completely like shut out all, fun and socialization from your life. Of course, like we're social creatures. We need to socialize. But I
balance.
think, yeah, in finding creative ways to socialize that are also productive for you, I think is important too. I think that's
Yep.
huge.
Yeah, and that's part of, when I talk to athletes, that's part of the cost. You know what I mean? Like if you tell me that you're all in, there's a cost to that. There's a big one.
Yes.
And I work with athletes who are paying that every day. You know what I mean? And sometimes it does suck. We have follow-up sessions and they're like, man, like, I missed this with my family, or I missed whatever, or hey, like all my friends are out, but I told her I didn't want to go because, I mean, I'm competing, in a week, and it's just like good, and like, wow, I did see him last week, but man, it's been a minute, that's part of the cost. If you want to be an elite athlete, you can't do the same thing that everybody else is doing. So I'll give you an example. So there's this I'm not going to put him out there, but there's this NASCAR driver that I was kind of in talks with. We're kind of going back and forth, and he was like, man, like everything you say is great. He was just like, but he was young and he was like 22 at the time, and he was just like, but when my friends are out, like I feel like I need to be out with them. You know what I mean? And so and he does that. He's always out. Like I would see his social media stuff like 2 o'clock in the morning. I'm just like, and so I'm like, okay, I'm like, hey, you know what? I can't force you to do this. I would never do that. But
Yeah.
my message to him was, is that your friend, like I said, I asked him, so are your friends, are they NASCAR drivers? And he was just
You're
like, well,
right.
no. He's like, no. He's like, are they trying to be the best? Are they trying to be the best, NASCAR driver that they can be? Because that's what you told me you wanted to be, right? And he was like, well, no. I'm like, well, there's their answer. It's like their priorities are much different than yours. You know what I mean?
Yes.
They're trying to be great. They're trying to evolve and be great a lot different than you are, whatever their career is. I said, so your priorities have to be different, right? And I was like, and if they were, I said, I don't know them, so I can't judge them. I said, but if they were your real friends, knowing that you have a race coming up, hey man, hey, don't worry about it. We're good. Like say, you don't need to be here, man. You got this going on.
Yep.
But a lot of times, they don't see that, and so they want you for what they need you for.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? And so that's kind of the difference. And those are his real friends. I'm not, like I said, I'm not judging them for that. But I'm just like, look, if they kind of were really into it, like for you, like you are, then they're like, hey man, like you got to race. Because think about it, like in NASCAR, like your reaction time has got to be.
Oh my gosh.
And so think about going in sleep deprived like that. Like, come on, man, like it's just crazy to me. So I kind of like map it out to him like that. And he was just like, damn. He's like, now that you say it like that, but we didn't. I mean, we still every now and then we'll text, but like, we're still not working together because he still wants to. He can't let that go. And eventually, it's gonna get him, and you know,
Oh yeah. Well,
on
especially
him.
being young too. Gosh. And with social media, it's so hard. Like You see all your friends having fun. But the thing is
Mhm.
like people are only showing you the highlights. They're
Yeah,
not showing you when they threw up in the bathroom 2 hours later and they got an argument with their girlfriend or whatever. Like,
yeah,
they don't show that part. They're just showing the
yeah,
fun part. So then you
yeah.
see that and you're like, oh, I'm missing out. But it's like your friends are gonna see you when you're champion and they're like,
Mhm.
man, maybe I shouldn't have gone to the
Worth
bar
it.
that night.
Yep, those sacrifices. See, I wish I had somebody like me when I played semi-pro football, and like I wish I had somebody like me to tell me that, hey man, you can't go to every after game party, bro. You know what I'm saying? Because like after our home games, we had like bars or clubs that was sponsoring us. Hey, just show your face, whatever. Well, I'll show my face and more. You know what I mean? Instead of
Mm-hmm.
just like, hey, like thanks guys for the sponsor. Have a few drinks, eat some of the pizza and wings they had laid out there, and then get the hell out of there. You know
Yeah.
what I mean? But I'm like, oh, where we at? What's going on? And so I wish I had somebody to tell me that, even so I was that guy, so like playing at a high level, but then like I was kind of the outlier, if you will. But then
Right.
eventually I started to, as I got that's when I was like, like my rookie year, I was like 21 years old, 20. I think I was 20 years old, and then probably about within my third season is when I started to figure it out.
Yeah.
And so that's kind of how I'm able to tell these other cats this now, because eventually I figured it out and I started actually doing it and putting the work in, and and kind of putting my head in the ground and just work and work, 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 work. There's no way I could tell these guys, just try to tell them that I didn't do it, you know.
Right.
Um, but I actually figured it out and was like, man, like this is actually better than this, because now you know I'm going up. So yeah.
100%. Yeah, and it's hard. It's the problem is there's not the instant gratification. So it takes a long
Hmm.
time to realize that, and it takes being disciplined for a long time to realize that you really weren't missing out on as much as you thought.
Yeah, I
And
loved
what
it. I
you
loved the work. Oh, I loved it. I
yeah.
did. It's just I just love the grind. I love the aspect of knowing that I'm getting better.
Yes.
Because then when I take the field, I get to show the other team what I've been doing. I get to
Right.
humiliate the guy on the other side. I know his family and his friends are here to watch him. Like, cause I played defense and I played defensive back. And it's like I know they're here to watch this receiver try to beat me and win over me. No, like I want that bus ride home to be I want it to be uncomfortable. You know what I mean? Like
Yeah.
I want the conversation. I want things to be uncomfortable for you when the game is over. I want that bus ride back to be quiet. I don't want
Right.
anybody on that team talking. You know what I mean? And so it's just like I just had that mindset, and yeah, it's just you don't really see that mindset anymore. It's kind of a you know
Yeah,
kind of died down a little
definitely.
bit.
Yeah, and that has to give you like especially as like a fighter because that's an individual sport too where it's like you're in there by yourself. It's just
Yeah.
you versus your opponent and they're in there by themselves. So, I feel like if you know that you've been skipping the parties, you've been going to bed at a good time, you've been doing the work, you've been putting the work in, you've been staying disciplined. If you know that and you're going into a fight, you have to have so much confidence in yourself because you're
Oh
like,
yeah.
I know I've been doing the work. I know nobody can touch me because I've been doing what nobody else is doing.
Yep. Expectant belief. There's this guy. I'll give him credit. Shout out to E.T. Johnson. I watch a lot of his stuff, and I implement a lot of his stuff into my when I'm talking to teams and different players. And one of the things that he talks about is having what's called an expectant belief. It's just like the belief that like you know that based on all the work that you put in, the training that you put in, all the sacrifices that you made, that when you go up to your against your opponent, there's nothing against him, but I just expect to beat him.
Yep.
You know what I mean? It's just that having that expectant belief, um, and it's just you have to have that as an athlete. Like I can imagine taking the field as a defensive back. I'm like, well, I hope I win against this guy. I hope I can stop
Yeah.
him. I hope I'm good. No, you can't go out there like that. Like man, like I'm the best out here. Like this guy's not getting anything on me. Like you have to have that. Um,
100%.
yeah,
I feel like that's the only way because then it also like some of like the mental rehearsal plays into it, where you can almost visualize yourself beating them and you can
Mm-hmm.
visualize yourself winning. And then when it happens, you're like, yeah,
Yeah.
duh.
Yeah.
Because look what I've been doing this whole time. Like, I knew this
Yeah.
was going to happen. So
You
I
can't
think,
skip. You can't skip any steps. And I think
no.
that's, sorry to cut you off, but that's another thing that Inky was talking about. He always says that, a lot of times, life or the game, if you will,
Yeah.
will present, in front of you, and place in front of you circumstances and situations that will expose you for skipping those steps along the way, along
Yes.
the journey. And so you have to go in hoping that your opponent skipped more steps than you did. You know what I mean?
Right.
Because it doesn't, you don't get exposed like that in practice. When you practice, like it exposes you like during competition, and then it's kind of like,
Oh,
dang,
yeah.
hey, you skipped a couple steps. This is, and then next thing you know, you either get knocked out or whatever the situation is. So you can't skip any steps along the way. And I'm one of the, well, not me, but sleep is one of the steps that gets skipped a lot, as it
Yeah.
pertains to, just in life, but in athletic performance. So can't skip that step.
Oh, no. Especially, well, and you already kind of touched on this, but like with combat sports, especially with the brain trauma, I mean, sleep is so
Mm-hmm.
important in for having, I guess, longevity in your career has to be huge, because if you're repeatedly, taking abuse in your brain,
Mm-hmm.
it's gonna catch up to you. And if you're not setting yourself up for success as far as like taking care of your brain health,
Yeah.
then and sleep is a huge part of that, then your career longevity is going to be limited. And yeah, I mean, what are some things that fighters in particular um can do to help not only their sleep but also helping like their brain health, their cognitive function? Like, it is, I guess, how big of a piece of that is sleep as well?
It's a big piece. So a lot of people don't realize that when we use our brains, it's said that structural damage actually occurs, in our brain as we like. So right now, as I'm delivering information to you, like we're sitting here doing this, like we can't feel it, but like structural damage is actually taking place. Like toxins and byproducts are being deposited, toxic waste is being deposited in our brain. And so when we sleep, and this was proven, with imaging while somebody was sleeping, our brain cells actually shrink, and pulses of cerebral spinal fluid come in and pretty much like power wash our brain. And then we have like a drainage system called our glymphatic system. So we have a lymphatic system in our body. Our brain has what's called a glymphatic system that helps drain that toxic waste out. Okay.
Hmm.
So then, like, that's why the next day we're more mentally aware, more mentally focused, and more mentally energized, and different things like that. And so that's really important when it comes to combat fighters, because you have to allow your brain the opportunity to clean itself out. So now you add in, you're up late, you just got punched in the face a bunch of times, whether you won or you lost. You know what I mean? And so now what can happen is, your brain can get confused because of that traumatic injury. And so now the brain cells are no longer producing energy. And energy is ATP, adenosine triphosphate. All right. That's like the currency that our cells use throughout our whole body, that it uses to operate, to function. Well, when your brain can't produce energy, they go into what's called an adenosine crisis or an energy crisis. And so the cells in the brain, the mitochondria, aren't producing energy. So now they're not producing oxygen. And now your brain's not getting oxygen. You know what I mean? And so then that's where cognitive function starts going downhill. See,
Okay.
a lot of combat athletes don't know that, and so sleep plays a huge role in that. So your reaction time, you know what I mean? Like all of that stuff, like recognizing and, or, being able to memorize or recognize, how a certain opponent, like, how they maybe, how their foot turns when they're about to load up and do something, whatever it is, like whatever specifics that you have, whatever their tell is, like you should be able to recognize that. You know what I mean? It's like, oh, there it is. Well, that happens in here, and sleep plays a big role in that. So like it's really really important for them to prioritize that, and that's what I help them do.
Right.
Oh, I actually want to show you. So this is something that they can do. So I have this device here, and I use this with my combat fighters. It's what's called intranasal photobiomodulation therapy. So red light therapy to the nose. So you clip it in here, And it what it does is it exposes like all these blood vessels and capillaries, in this, olfactory bulb here. And so what happens is that this, like, the mitochondria in our cells picks up that light, and it's systemic. So like those blood cells, they carry that energy to the brain, and it helps the brain with like cell repair, cell, regeneration, like all that kind of stuff. And so it really, really helps with that, maintaining brain health. So
That's awesome.
yeah.
And I guess one big question too is like, when you're working with a fighter,
Mhm.
um, is it more of like, okay, you didn't get good sleep the night before your fight, so your reaction time is not going to be as good? Or is it like a compounding effect of like, you didn't get good sleep consistently for 2 months? And
Mhm.
so, or is it kind of a little bit of both?
It's a little bit of both, but it's the not getting sleep for a consistent amount of like days or weeks, because what happens is you build up a lot of what's called sleep debt. Okay.
Right.
And so when you build up a lot of that sleep debt, so like there's an equation for, it's like, sleep debt is like the amount of sleep that you should be getting, the amount of sleep that you are getting, and then that equals your sleep debt. So if you know that you want to get 9 hours of sleep, right? But then you only get 6, okay, and that's every day. Well, just do the math on that, and then the sleep that you're not getting, that's your sleep debt. and,
Right.
and you don't get that back. So the biggest misconception, oh, I'll just sleep. I know I'll just sleep in. You don't really get that back. And so
Mm.
if you're not sleeping well for like 2 or 3 weeks leading up to a fight, but then like you get like 2 good nights, like you're not going to be 100%. Now, don't get
Okay.
me wrong, like there's still a component of your adrenaline, like you're getting ready to fight, like you're amped up,
Yeah.
but it's still making an impact on the back end, that you don't realize. So like you got to sleep consistently good, for a week to 2 or 3 weeks. You should be doing it anyway, but obviously, we have lives and different things going on. But like,
Sure.
if you're competing, you got to focus for like 2 to 3 weeks leading up to whatever your competition is. You should be focusing on prioritizing that, like big time. And just kind of, that's why I exist, to help them be able to do that, consistently leading up to whatever they're doing, or even before that, just helping them understand, like, you got to be doing this all the time.
Yeah. 100%. Do you think that there's like a different demand of sleep for fighters? Like, do they need more sleep than like somebody like me, like the average person? I mean, I train a little bit, but I'm not training for a fight or anything. So it's like, do you think, or is it just kind of depend on the person, like what their sleep needs are? Or I guess, how do you even figure out how much sleep you need?
Yeah, it's both actually. So like, since you train, I would treat you like an athlete, because you're using and abusing your body more than the average person. You know
Right.
what I mean. So like, kind of like I said before, like, as a fighter, any kind of athlete, you use and abuse your body more than the average, non-athlete. So your body literally requires more recovery and repair time. And that happens during sleep. So that they need at least 9 to 10 hours, because the average person, they say, needs to be between 7 to 8. You
Hmm.
know what I mean? And so now you add on what you're doing to your body, and you need more, and so you need more than that, because your muscles need to repair themselves. Those muscle fibers and tissues need to fuse back together bigger, harder, and stronger. That's literally how we get stronger, is just during sleep. Um, a lot of people don't realize that growth hormone is released during sleep. About 75 to 80% of growth hormone is released during when we sleep.
Hmm.
So that's really, really important,
Yeah.
to prioritize that. And so growth hormone release is actually reduced or decreased when your sleep onset is decreased. So when you're staying up until 2, 3 o'clock in the morning, like your body literally, like, we have what's called a sleep drive. And so your body, like, literally is like, hey, wait a minute, we're not supposed to be. So it tries to like do like a hard cold shutdown on you, and then you're like, no, 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 we're doing shots, you know what I mean? And then you just keep going,
Yeah.
and now, and so now it's like, well, damn, like, now I can't even release this growth hormone. Like, I can't even clean the brain out. I can't do this, and this. And then that's when all hell breaks loose.
Right. Yeah, exactly. And I don't know, I feel like First of all, yeah, it's so hard to get enough sleep. It's hard to schedule it. It's hard to make the time for it. And I feel like just, yeah, so many things get in the way. And a lot of times, fighters, not only are they fighting, but they also have like their full-time job on top of it, or they have a part-time job at least until they get to, an elite level. A lot of times they don't have a choice. So I feel like that's a big obstacle too, is just scheduling it and making sure to make the time for it, because they have just so much going on. And yeah, I mean, like, there's only so many hours in the day. There's only so many things you can do. So it's almost impossible to get good sleep without making a sacrifice somewhere else in your life. Like you really honestly have to. And I mean, honestly, okay. So piggybacking again, what do you think about caffeine? Like, in general, like, how impactful is that on disrupting sleep patterns, or is there a good, I guess a healthy dose of caffeine to consume, or should we be consuming it every day? Should we not be consuming it every day? I was really
Yeah.
curious about that too.
No, it's all in when you consume it. So
Yeah.
timing is everything. So like you get up in the morning, you have your cup, great. Have that one cup, be done. Now it's hard, and now a lot of coffee drinkers. I mean, they're gonna, I always get the oh yeah, I always get that, but you got to look at how they're sleeping on the back end. So a lot of them
Mm,
are doing things that make them require coffee at like 2 or 3 o'clock in the afternoon. So when you start fixing these different things that you're doing or not doing sleep wise, then eventually you'll realize, oh dang, okay, that first cup of coffee was great. Now I don't need it anymore. But they go through this vicious cycle of thinking, oh, I gotta have this coffee, I gotta have this coffee to pick them back up again because their sleep hygiene is terrible. Anyway, I just kind of went left there. Um, but no, like I don't have a problem with caffeine. Just the one cup, maybe two if you want to, like in the morning, because see, caffeine has an 8 to 10 hour half life, and so that's why we say like after your first cup in the morning, like that, make that be it. Because what happens is when we drink caffeine, caffeine binds to adenosine, okay? And so what it does is it blocks like the sleepy effect that adenosine has on our bodies. And so that's why we get that big pickup because it's
yeah.
blocking that relaxing, sleepy. And so then when it finally wears off, well, the thing people don't realize is like that adenosine is still building up. You know what I
Mm,
mean? And so then when that caffeine wears off, then it's just like destiny, and then we hit that wall and we crash, you know. And so having that one cup is really have your one cup and then be done. But it's easy for me to say it like that. That's
yeah.
like what it's supposed to be like, you know what I mean? But you for the
Oh, I'm
for
a
the people that have
caffeine
to have
fiend, so I
oh God. Yeah, so for the ones that have to have like caffeine like throughout the entire day, there's something on the back end that's going on that's making them have to do that every single day, you know. So you have to fix your sleep hygiene and fix your sleep schedule to really not have to do that anymore. And I've done that with
yeah.
people. Like I've helped them figure that out, but it's just again like it takes discipline and you have to want that change.
100%. I feel like too, like, sometimes when you get hooked on caffeine, you build up such a tolerance that one cup doesn't do anything, and then you're
Yeah,
like, all
yeah,
right, here's the second cup, here's the third cup, and it's like, oh my god. So I don't know. I probably need to take like a break from caffeine, honestly, and just kind of
yeah,
reset. But yeah, that's been, I mean, lately I've been actually feeling like my sleep has been pretty good finally,
yeah.
but I still have like the caffeine addiction, and I'm like, I gotta fix this. I gotta still, have, like you said, have my cup of coffee, but keep it to that and not continue drinking it throughout the day to fuel myself. And a lot of that comes from the chronic fatigue too. And that was a bad habit that I developed, because that was the only way I knew how to deal with chronic fatigue, was to just pour caffeine on it. And it's not good because then, like I said, it messes up my sleep. So yeah, I wanted to ask you about that because I feel like that is huge. And a lot of people are very addicted, not only to caffeine, but also, we've got a lot of stimulants use
Mm-hmm.
stimulant usage right now is huge. So, and I used to take medication for ADHD, which all of it pretty much is stimulants, and
Yeah.
that really had a bad effect on my sleep. Like I thought I had insomnia, but I was like, oh, it's
Oh
just
wow.
because I'm taking this. Because now I don't. I don't have a
Whoa, no
problem.
way.
Yeah, it's crazy. Yeah, so I guess so for the average person, usually like 6 to 7 hours a night is pretty normal. And then but for an athlete,
Like 7 to 9
around
is
nine to ten.
yeah, about 7 to 9 is what they say for the average person, and then like for athletes, like I think it's like 10 to 12 if they can. So like about the
Yeah.
10 hour mark really where I would cap it. But
Oh my
again, like
gosh, yeah.
everybody's speed is different. Everybody's there are outliers out there. Again, like they sleep for 5 hours and that's all that they need. you know so there are people out there that's what works for their body, but for the majority that's really not how it works.
Yeah. Well, and then there's always the misconception of like, oh, if you sleep a lot, you're lazy. And it's
No,
like
not at all, not at all.
that's what I've always thought too, because like it's just so normalized in our culture to not sleep enough and to just get it done, get everything done, get as much done as you can.
Yeah.
And it's almost like I've had people literally tell me that I was sleeping too much. And I
Mhm.
was like, I don't think so. I'm like, I think my body needs sleep.
Yeah.
I think that's why
Well,
I'm
there's a thing
sleeping.
called hypersomnia. So there's a thing called hypersomnia, which is like oversleeping. But those are for like the people that are sleeping like 14, 16 hours.
Yeah.
You know what I mean? Like that's hypersomnia. Like if
That
you're
did
sleeping.
happen to me at one point. I that was when I first got sick. That's when I really
Mhm.
started to kind of get serious with my doctors on figuring out what was going on because I was sleeping 14 hours a day on average.
Yeah,
And
kind of
that was
hypersomnia.
right before I got diagnosed with lupus. And I was like, oh, yeah, this is not this is not normal. But still, then after that, like I would go to bed at like 8 p.m. sometimes. And I it's like, yeah, I feel like I need this much sleep. And I feel like too when you have chronic fatigue, your sleep needs are a little different. But it's
Mhm.
hard to tell sometimes when it's just when your body is telling you you need sleep and when you're just like, oh, am I just being lazy? Am I just wanting to sleep in and, be a bum? Like sometimes it's hard to tell the difference. And so it's tough. It's tough to kind of let yourself sleep. I feel like sometimes that's hard for me is just allowing myself to get enough sleep and not feeling guilty for it. I feel
Yeah.
like a lot of times in my life, especially like I've worked in car sales, which if you know anything about that, it's usually like a 75-hour work week minimum.
Yeah.
And you're at the dealership all day long and yeah, like I would almost give myself guilt trips sometimes for sleeping um until I felt like I was rested. And so I'd be like, "Oh, I slept in today." And I would like be so hard on myself for that and I feel like now I need to kind of maybe be a little nicer to myself with that and realize
There's
that
nothing wrong with that.
sleep is
There's nothing wrong
important.
with
I
that.
need it.
There is nothing wrong. There's nothing wrong with that. Like, get your sleep.
Yeah.
You get up for your day, and then do whatever it is that you got to do. I
Yeah.
mean, because like, here's the thing: some people are like, oh, well, I get up at 6 a.m. every morning, and that's great. That's because you go to bed at like 8:30 or 9, and that's perfectly fine. You know what I mean? So like they're going to bed at a decent time, and then they're getting up at 6. And that's fine, right?
Mhm.
That's okay. Like I mean, I don't have a problem with that. So
Right.
like some people get up at 5 o'clock in the morning when they go to bed earlier. There's a balance there. It's when you're going to
Yeah.
bed at like 10:30, 11 o'clock, and you still get up at 5 or 6. You know what I mean? And it's just like, but then like you're expecting your body to be able to maintain and sustain physical functioning the way you need it to, and it can't. So like, okay, that kind of leads me to this here. So um, a lot of athletes that they experience what's called fatigue misperception when they're sleep deprived.
Mm.
And so when you're sleep deprived, it actually alters your perspective on how tired you are. So now you're like, oh man,
Interesting.
it's a lot harder than today, or like, oh man, I'm more tired. Oh man, like I was lifting this like it was no problem, but now I'm struggling with it because your brain thinks that it's more that it's harder than it really is. You're more tired
Mm,
than you really are because your muscles are tired, because your brain's tired, your body's tired, it's
yeah.
fatigued. Didn't let it you didn't let it replenish all the nutrients and oxygen that you use throughout the day. You didn't let your muscles recover like they were supposed to. You didn't let your brain clean itself out like it's supposed to. And so now you think these tasks are a lot harder than what they really are. Your decision making takes a hit. And now your reaction time is impacted by a little over 100%. Like all these things matter, and like this is what these athletes don't understand and what they don't know when they're just like, when they're like, oh, no, I don't, I don't want to do that, or if they just don't know in general. Some they just
Yeah.
I can't tell you how many conversations I had with pro athletes, and they're just like, oh man, I had no idea, I had no idea that your body breaks down protein into amino acids, and then when you sleep, those amino acids work in conjunction with your growth hormone, right? So replacing your protein, at least an hour before bed is really important. Oh, I didn't know that. But you're an elite at like who didn't tell you this? You know what I mean?
Right.
So it's just like, yeah.
Yeah, I could see that being a huge problem. So, people who are out there, which I would assume is probably the majority of people who aren't getting good sleep, especially athletes, what
Hmm.
would be like, I guess, your biggest piece of advice to them, or where's a good place to start with kind of trying to fix it?
Call me. No, no. DM me. I'll get you right now. Really, what I tell you is just be more mindful, like and intentional with your sleep habits. Like pay
Yes.
attention to what you're doing that's causing these, that's causing you to not be able to to get a good night's sleep. And a lot of it is lifestyle changes. But in order to execute lifestyle changes, like you have to be honest with yourself about what it is that you're doing, and that is detrimental. So, because a lot of times, that we have this comfort zone, and we want to stay within that comfort zone, but that comfort zone's hurting us.
Yep.
So it's just stuff like that. So you got to be mindful of that. Implement a 30-minute wind down period. Like you can't be going 100 miles an hour. Then like, oh, going to bed. Can't do that. Give yourself some time to come down. Again, implement some, kind of some pre bedtime things like those cues, that they help your body kind of like, in your brain recognize, oh, okay, so we're getting ready for bed when we do this. And so then it kind of helps bring you down, helps with, melatonin, output, release and different things like that. So just be mindful. But if you have any, I mean, like, anybody watching this, DM me, be more than happy to work with you. Fighters out there, DM me. We get you right.
Absolutely. Yeah. Well, I appreciate you sharing all this. It's been really helpful in making me think about my sleep. If I need to fix my sleep. And I mean, and I feel like I'm pretty good, with sleep, but there's a lot of room for improvement still. And I feel like it can only help me go to the next level with figuring those things out and making little tweaks, and yeah, not being on my phone all night, before I go to bed, and having bad habits, and yeah, like you said, just kind of creating a good environment for me to be able to not only fall asleep but also get good sleep, because it's super super important um for your brain, and what I do requires me to use my brain quite a bit, so
Yeah. Yeah. Oh, and also also having a dark sleep environment and a cool sleep environment. You definitely want to have a
okay.
cool environment because that helps facilitate deep restorative sleep as well.
Oh yeah, that was one last thing I was going to ask you about, because I watch a lot of Andrew Huberman, and he always talks about like the sunlight. So
Hmm.
getting sun exposure. Is that something that you delve into at all, or is that something that you
Oh
are a
yeah.
believer in? Okay.
Oh,
Cool.
absolutely. Oh, yeah, absolutely. I mean, I do that as well with some of my athletes. Well, I try to with all of them. Is like when you get up, go outside for like 10 or 15 minutes,
Okay.
and get that sunlight, helps wake you up. So what happens is that light, so our eyes feed that information to our brain. It says, oh, it's light, time to wake up, turn off the melatonin faucet, start releasing other hormones that are conducive to wakefulness and different things like that. And so you get that, and it's like, oh, cool. It helps you. It helps you with your circadian rhythm or your circadian clock. Okay. And so that's really, really important because now what happens is that your eyes are constantly feeding that information. So then as the day goes by, sun starts going down, it's feeding that information. Oh, hey, the sun's going down. It's dark now. Certain components, in your circadian clock start taking place. And so then it gets to a certain time. It's like, oh, okay, it's dark now. We need to start preparing for downtime, relaxation, sleep, different things like that. And so you got to kind of listen to your body when it's telling you these things, and really facilitate what it's trying to do. And when we push back at that, that's when things start kind of falling apart. So
Interesting. Yeah, I noticed when I was going outside, like first thing in the morning, which I have a dog, so it's pretty easy for me to do because I have to go
yeah,
outside first thing in the morning. But a lot of people don't. So I think that's important. And also staying outside for a little bit, because sometimes I'll just run outside and as soon as my dog's done, I'm back inside.
back
And
inside.
so yeah, I need to kind of stay out there for a little bit. Even though it's freezing right now, it's super
And
cold, but
wait, are you in Illinois?
Missouri,
Missouri. Okay, yeah. So you're not too far from me. But real quick, though, I also want.
probably
So these
similar
are really
weather.
good too. Light machines. Okay,
Ah,
light machines are really big. We would use these in clinic when patients would have what's called like seasonal affective disorder or SAD.
yeah.
It's a type of seasonal depression that people kind of fall into around the same time every year, around
Oh,
this
yeah.
time when it's like gloomy and gray outside. And so this
Yes.
light machines are designed to simulate um, like the lux. That's how they measure light. It's supposed to simulate kind of like sunlight, and you just kind of wake up, you kind of sit with this in front of your face, and let it shine on you. And it's supposed to
Hmm.
it's really helped a lot of patients when I was in clinic. So I use that as well for some people that have issues in the mornings. If we're like, well, by the time I get up, it's still dark outside. Okay, well then use your light machine.
Right. Yeah. Interesting. That's really cool. Well, where can people find you? Where can people find your business and all that stuff?
Yeah. So you can so I'm on Facebook, I have a Facebook business page. It's Circadian Health and Performance. You can go on my website, www.circadianhealth.org. You can fill out like a little form on there, and it'll alert me that you filled it out. Leave me a message. You can find me on Instagram at th sleep coach. I'm on Twitter at th sleep coach. Um, Message me, DM me, whatever, and we'll have a discussion and see if there's a way for us to work together.
Fantastic. Well, I appreciate you coming on. I'm sure I'll probably have you on again once I get my sleep figured out, and then I'll have all kinds of new questions to ask you. Uh, but I really appreciate it. I mean, not only is it going to help, other people who may need to hire someone like you, but also just helps me, like, because I need to be reminded about this kind of stuff. So,
Yeah.
yeah, I appreciate it. And sometimes it's just the awareness. It's just knowing, like, oh yeah, I need to get more sleep. This is important. Sometimes just
Yep.
having someone say that, it can make a huge difference. So I appreciate you coming on. I definitely will be watching this with a lot of intent when I when I go back to edit it, because I need to, like I said, I need to improve my sleep. I think probably everybody watching this could do something to improve their sleep. So yeah, and of course I will let you know as soon as I get this out. It'll probably be tomorrow. um
Mhm.
but yeah, if you need anything, if you have any questions for me or anything, just let me know. But I'll try to spread the word and get this out there, because yeah, I mean, I do talk to a lot of fighters and a lot of athletes, and especially when they're trying to bridge that gap between where they are at now and getting to the elite level. I mean, something like that could make a huge difference. So it's
Yeah.
awesome that
Hey,
you're out there doing it.
I wanted to ask you this really quick. So, because
Yes.
they don't mind me changing this because but I work with so I worked with Jose Shorty Torres,
Yeah.
which is pretty cool. He was actually my first MMA fighter that I worked with. He gave me a really cool testimonial.
That's
And
awesome.
so like I think once he gets back, he's getting ready to fight again. He's already overseas. He's fighting for a belt, and so he was interested in like the whole brain thing. So I think when he gets back, I'm gonna try to catch up with him. He's that dude's all over the place. Um, And then Mila Hill. I don't know. Do you know who Mila Hill is? Have you heard?
It
She's out
sounds
of
familiar,
Orlando.
but I'm not 100% familiar.
She's out of Orlando. She's an amateur. I think she's about to go pro.
Oh,
Working
okay.
with her, and
She's in Orlando, you said?
yeah, she fights out of Orlando.
Huh.
Um, and then who else? And I'm in talks right now with a Valentina Vakova. I don't know if you like.
Yep.
She's from. Okay, so like I've kind of been in talks with her. I think I might get her. So, but that'd be
That's
super cool
awesome.
if I get her on board. Yeah. So
That'd
there's a few.
yeah, that would be amazing. 'Cause she's in the UFC, right?
No, so she signed with American Top Team.
Well, that's her gym, but was she on Contender Series or I can't remember.
I don't
I've seen
know.
her fight before.
Have you? Well, she hasn't fought MMA yet. She hasn't fought MMA. She's a boxer. She boxed.
Maybe I'm thinking
Over
of somebody else.
Yeah, no, she hasn't. She's still waiting to get her first fight.
Oh,
Um,
okay.
but yeah, so um, but yeah, so yeah, she's really cool, and had a conversation with her recently. So hopefully I can get her on board and get her going
That's
too. So
awesome.
yeah, pretty
Yeah,
neat.
that's really cool. I'm one of my friends, Josh Augustine. He trains with Jose, so
Oh, nice.
that's really funny. Yeah, the
Yeah,
mutual connection there. Yeah, I still haven't met him. I still well, he was at the fights when Josh fought the last time, but
yeah.
and I think because they train together, they go to the PI together all the time. I see them posting. But yeah, I mean that's awesome. Yeah,
Yeah, he's a
I
good dude.
feel
He's
like
funny too. I like him.
yeah. Yeah. Yeah, that's awesome. Yeah, I feel like you you'll only probably grow more and more and more the more you kind of get out there and have these conversations cuz yeah, like I
Hmm.
said, I mean there's a huge demand for just like what are some little things I can do to get to the next level cuz it's only going to evolve more as the sport grows
Yep.
and people they're going to need, somebody to help them just bridge that gap like I said to get to that next level and that's why they have nutritionists, that's why they have strength and conditioning coaches, that's why they have all these things. So sleep coach,
Yep.
there's all these little pieces and you put them together and that's the recipe. That is it.
Yeah, yeah, absolutely, absolutely. So, but no, thank you so much. Am I saying your name right, Brianna? Am I saying that right?
I just go by Bree most of the time. Yeah.
Bree. Okay,
Yeah.
we'll go with Bree. Yeah.
That's
But
easier.
no, Bree, thank you so much for having me on. Like, I love having this conversation and getting the
Yeah.
awareness out there, just the athletes and non-athletes, as well. Um, but yeah, this is a lot of fun. I love doing it. Like I said, I always get nervous, but then like once I start, I'm fine.
Yeah, for sure. Absolutely. Well, yeah, thank you again for your time. And like I said, I'll let you know once it's out. And yeah, I really appreciate you coming on and educating me and everybody else. So yeah, I really, yeah, I'm excited to kind of see even more of your results and testimonials in the future. So yeah,
Awesome.
keep me posted.
Thank you so much. Will do.
Awesome. Well, you have a great rest of your night and have a great Sunday. And I will talk to you soon.
All right, you too. We'll see you.
All right.